Hello everyone, today I wanted to explain what I am working on during my free time. I am creating my custom Unity tools that could be used to prototype turn-based multiplayer tactical games. Let me do a quick presentation of what I have done here. Currently I am running one host application and 3 client applications. And I can start some matches between those clients. For example, here I started a game between 2 players at the same time. Only one player has initiative, so if I try to make a move on this client, I can't do anything. But if I do the same thing on the other client, I can do all the moves. And as you can see, here is some pathfinding. And when I end my turn, I finally can perform an action on the second client, and I can no longer do it on the first client. So pretty much basic stuff. But also I have some other stuff like performing an attacks, currently without any fancy animations. But as you can see, after destroying this unit, it also was destroyed on the other client. And if I am using actions, you can see that energy shown on this yellow icon is being reduced, and it will be restored at the beginning of the next turn. I can also start a game versus AI like this one, so when I make moves, I can end my turn and AI is doing some random stuff here. There are also flying units, so there is a different pathfinding for each kind of unit, each kind of movement. The game can be also run on the host. You can also notice that every match has a different board. It's a random board and with a different style. For example, here are hexagonal tiles, but quad tiles are also supported. And I can start the game with any number of players. For instance, here is the match for 4 players. And it is syncing pretty well on every client. If I want, I can redownload the match state and everything is being synced. Let me show you how it looks from the Unity perspective. For instance, here I have my custom unit editor, which shows all the units in a particular unit pool. I can select any pool I want, I can change the unit stats, etc, etc. I can even add some other abilities to them. For instance, an ability that lets me destroy a tile or a different kind of movement. And I can easily remove those abilities here, and also I can change the stats here. Each unit can have different attributes, and new attributes can be created quite easily because they are all scriptable objects. There are no hard-coded attributes here. For instance, if I wanted to add an attribute like, I don't know, armor, I could simply duplicate one attribute, change its name, and set some default values. Then I can open my unit window and I can add it manually and refresh here, and now you can see there is new attribute. I can duplicate it for other units. I also aim to make interactions quite flexible in terms of modifications. For instance, here I have a list of triggers, so I can add any kind of trigger to them, any kind of condition, any kind of cost. For example, here every time this action is performed, it consumes 1 energy, and there are also tags and other stuff. Tags are used mostly for organization of the project, and I will add some extra customization to it. For instance, this ability has attack movement, which makes it appear in the movement column here. I also have customizable pathfinding assets. For example, here is an asset for walk movement. An unit can end only on tiles that exist and tiles that are not occupied by other units. Here are passable conditions, so it also can't move through other units and so on. I have also added a possibility of scaling effects with a particular attribute. For instance, here I am scaling the walk movement characteristics with speed of units, so the more speed unit has, the more cells it can travel. I can also change the way it scales. For instance, instead of taking the current value of an attribute, I can take the max value or min value, or I can even change it to constants. If a unit is targeting another unit, I can also decide which unit I am taking in consideration when I am scaling the ability. For instance, if I am attacking a unit, I could scale it with attack of my source unit, but I could also scale it with target armor. So the more armor enemy has, the less damage it would make. I am aiming to make everything as customizable as possible. For instance, I have added a possibility to configure the default settings of a match, and I can create multiple match configurations for the game, so I can load a particular configuration I want, and in this particular configuration every unit inherits an interaction that adds 2 energy at the start of every turn. I have also added a possibility of adding any number of turn phases you want, and every turn phase would take a different role in the game. For instance, if I have an ability that adds 2 energy at the start of every turn, then it will trigger only during the turn start phase. And in the turn trigger, I can decide what kind of phase triggers this ability. What I like in basing the game logic on the scriptable objects is that you can modify the way game behaves without even opening the code. You can change it without recompiling the code, and you can change in runtime. For example, here I can change the movement settings by removing some restrictions, like tile restrictions, and when I do that, now I can move unit freely, even if tiles don't exist. I want to add more features in the future. I want to make it as customizable as possible. For example, I want to add support for stuff like replays, customizable AI, possibility of saving the board, and so on. If there are some features you would like to see in such tools, let me know, and I will probably make them in the future. This is everything for today, and thanks for watching.